No, I was. We're live now. And greetings and welcome to another Educator Innovator webinar. It's March 31st, and today we'll be talking with a group of Central Texas teachers about how they've created innovative classrooms through lively teaching, academic rigor, and connective instruction, the three components of engagement. I'm your host, Paul O. at the National Writing Project in Berkeley, California, though today I'm operating out of my home in Oakland. These Texas teachers and their students allowed their classrooms to be filmed to highlight a specific approach to innovative teaching and learning so that it might be shared with others. The goal of this ongoing project is to inspire and provide guidance to educators. Each video includes a process guide to help teachers think through implementation in their own classroom. Today our guests include the three teachers featured in the videos and three folks from Region 13 in Texas who put this project together. Cindy Hamilton, Janet Hester, Emily Smith, Valerie Taylor, Nicole Welling, and Jennifer Wolven. But let's let our guests introduce themselves, starting on our screen left. So Emily, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, yes, my name is Emily Smith, and I am a 5th grade language arts and social justice teacher in Austin, Texas. And I think that's it.
Great, thanks. And how about Janet and Cindy? Would you two please introduce yourselves?
Sure, I'm Janet Hester. I'm the secondary English language arts specialist here at Region 13 Education Service Center in Austin, Texas.
And I'm Cindy Hamilton, and I'm the coordinator for curriculum and instruction, and have had the pleasure and honor of working with the ladies who did the actual work getting this project off the ground at Region 13.
Perfect, thanks. Jen, you're up next.
Have we done Nicole?
Actually, I'm on my screen left. You
oh, okay. Sorry. Okay.
That's fine.
I was seeing her first. Okay, I'll go ahead. My name is Jennifer Wolven, and I currently am an educational technologist for the virtual school for Department of Defense. But I have the immense pleasure of working at Region 13 as an education technology specialist up until last October, and got to work with Janet and Cindy on this project.
Great, thanks. And Nicole?
So my name is Nicole Welling, and currently I'm an educational consultant and writing tutor in some local high schools, but formerly ESL teacher at Eastside Memorial High School, where the video was filmed with Jen Woolman. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So welcome to all of you. And before we get started, I just wanted to say to those people who are watching from the Educator Innovator webinar page, we encourage you to jump into the chat room to talk with others who are watching. We'll be posting links to resources there, and if you have questions, please post them in the chat, and we'll bring them here into the conversation that's happening online in this webinar. So first of all, I just wanted to clarify, so a number of people who were involved in this work also represent the Heart of Texas Writing Project. Is that correct?
Well, the Central Texas Writing Project. Yes, yeah. Am I right, Emily? You were Central Texas, correct?
Yes, I'm a CT.
Okay. So, yeah, the teachers that were videoed, and we are missing one. We're missing Valerie Taylor, but she is going to jump in about 15 minutes in, is a Central Texas Writing Project teacher and assistant director. And Emily is a CT with Central Texas Writing Project, and Nicole Welling as well went through Central Texas Writing Project. So, yeah, there's that connection there, definitely. And Laura Lee, I'm going to just bring that up, even though she's lurking on the sidelines.
That's right, Laura Lee Spratt. She's in the chat room and is going to be talking to people there. So great, thanks for that clarification. So I'm wondering, perhaps Jen and Cindy could tackle this question for our audience. So really, how did this project come about? And perhaps you could include a few more details about what exactly the project is, and we'd be happy to post a link to the videos in the chat room.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, I'm going to back up and just explain a little bit about, for anybody who's viewing and doesn't understand what we're saying when we say Region 13 Education Service Center. Texas is divided up into 20, am I right, Cindy?
Yeah.
20 service centers, and the purpose of the service center is to be of service to teachers in their area in a wide variety of ways. And I feel like we have kind of a unique ability to see into a lot of different classrooms. When I was with Region 13, I had the opportunity to go into a variety of classrooms in rural settings and urban settings, and in helping teachers. Just one of the things that really struck me was that there was this kind of need to have more, to know what other teachers were doing, to kind of get some insight into innovative practices or other practices that were out there that maybe these teachers didn't have access to. And so I think, and then at the same time, knowing about incredible work that was happening in other classrooms. And I worked with Nicole at Eastside. I worked with Valerie at Westlake High School, and I actually came across Emily's work in an article that she had written for Huffington Post, I believe it was, talking about her classroom, and I was just kind of blown away and wanted to go in and see it. So just this desire to kind of share that with others. And so Cindy and I spent a lot of time talking about what that might look like. You know, how do we bring this to other teachers and share these really cool practices? And I think we always knew that we wanted to do some videos, but just not sure, you know, what form that might take and kind of how it would come about. But the idea was always to link innovative practices and the use of technology, but how teachers were utilizing technologies that really help their students to connect to outside of the school walls, or just to bring a little more depth to what students were doing. And so now I'll let Cindy add anything that maybe she thinks I've missed.
No, I just think, so we didn't have any money to do this. We had lots of ideas, but no money. But we were fortunate enough to have the Texas Literacy Initiative funds that we could use for this purpose, because we wanted to highlight ways in which, as Jen said, teachers were getting their students to use their literacy skills in real world environments. And so we were able to kind of use our state funds and work with our communication and production department to get the video of the classroom events, and then talk with teachers. And then Janet and Laura Lee put a tremendous amount of work into the process guides, because we didn't want to just throw videos up and say, look, this is really cool, which it is, it's really cool, but we wanted then to add that piece to it of how does it align to our state standards, and how can other teachers make this happen in their own classrooms. And so it was a great partnership. Jen had great vision, and we were able to put those resources together and do this.
And it was passed off to just the right person in Janet, because she and Laura Lee worked hard on those process guides, and I feel like that was something that really does, it allows teachers, it gives teachers those next steps. It's great to see that inspiration, but then to be able to look at that and think, okay, here's how I might actually bring this into my own classroom.
Right.
So I'm wondering, Janet, actually, could you say a little bit more about the process guides? It sounds like you worked quite a bit on them, and I'm wondering, as an educator in the audience who comes across the videos and comes across the process guides, what might they expect to find in those process guides?
Well, for each of the practices that we uncovered, say it was blog writing with Nicole's video, or maybe it was stop motion collaboration with Emily's video, we wanted teachers to get a feeling for where in their curriculum would this fit, because teachers feel beholden to following their district curriculum, and which, you know, it's important to teach through the standards. So we wanted to give them a place of thinking, okay, so you're teaching maybe expository writing. We want to make that engaging and motivating for students. We want to give students ownership. So where in the Texas standards does using blog writing or using like the Hive Talk platform work within a curriculum? So we kind of laid that context. We actually like handpicked the actual standards that would apply to doing a project like that. And then we gave teachers simple steps to think about, as in going to their curricular documents and finding a specific place where they could embed a project like this, thinking about the technology that they have and how they could leverage that technology, thinking about what platform they wanted to use, say if they were going to use blogs with their students, and giving them some resources to start with.
Great, and that sounds incredibly helpful and a really useful and unbelievably useful accompanying resource to go with the video. So I'm wondering if we could turn now to the teachers who are actually videotaped. I am curious, and so it looks like we have on right now Emily and Nicole, and so it would be great if you took turns or however you wanted to answer this. This is not directed to any one individual of you, but love to hear from both of you, and then Valerie when she comes on. Could you each talk about your video and what is the strategy or approach you shared, and how you came about, how did it come about, that strategy or that approach, and what about it would you like to share with other teachers?
Well, they ended up, oh, do you want to go first?
No, go for it. You're ready to go.
Okay. When they first contacted me, I believe it was about our Hive Talks, like our TED Talks that we were doing, TED-like talks. And, but then they came in and we were also working, usually I think that the Hive Society, which is what I call the classroom, I don't really like that word, but like what the space of those four walls is, we think of it kind of like a think tank. So there are lots of things going on, and Jennifer was like, oh my gosh, you're also doing this amazing stop motion video. We have to do this as well. They've done all the research on it. They're writing scripts. We've got editors over here, but then some kids were still working on their Hive Talks. So it was just kind of, I think it was neat to see the fluidity of both of those, and so that's how we kind of came to film both of them. My thought process with the Hive Talks was essentially I use TED Talks all the time in the classroom, and the kids are really drawn to them. I know that you wouldn't usually think that that would be something that's appropriate for fifth graders, but they're really great digital expository texts, and some of them are literary nonfictions, but for the most part, expository texts. And then basically they wanted to do it, and I knew they were going to do it anyways, but we put together, it got bigger and bigger. The kids were really passionate about their Hive Talks. They wanted to put on a conference just like they had seen, and so that was kind of my idea through it. And I'm lucky at my school that I'm not tied to the district curriculum, but everything that I'm doing is still in the state standards and digs even deeper than those state standards would go. And so that's a really great way for kids to write expository or procedural texts. And then you're also talking about putting together full digital presentations to go along with it, reading and researching. That was kind of my thought as a teacher behind it, but really the kids are what made it what it was.
It's interesting to hear that your students are very much drawn to TED Talks. What do you think about the TED Talks is so appealing to them? Is it the presentational piece? Is it the act of trying to create something that is a TED Talk?
I think the main thing for the demographic that I work with is it's the first time that someone was like, you guys are capable of so much. My expectations were so high of them. Like, this may be high school or college level, but we can do this, and we're going to read about this, and we're gonna watch it. I guess I say read, experience this text. We're going to look at the transcript. We're going to learn from it. And I always say, and I heard this once, and I don't know who said it, so thank you to whoever said it, but children will rise to your expectations, but they'll also fall to them. And so the expectations, they're like, oh my gosh, we're going to look at this college level text? What is this? And they're totally invested. I think in all honesty, their initial attraction to it is that it is a little bit more difficult than what they've seen, or significantly more difficult than what they've seen. And then they grow to love it because they do love the digital features. They find them fascinating or just interesting, things that they've never heard about.
Great. Yeah, I've also heard someone describe TED Talks themselves as essentially a modern version of storytelling around a campfire. So
Yeah.
I've always thought that was interesting too. You know, this notion of a communal way of sharing what we know, either as you said in an expository format or in a nonfiction, literary nonfiction sort of way. But yeah, I find that really fascinating.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I've never heard that, and that's awesome because, like I said, some really are very procedural in the way of like, this is how I did this next, I did this next, and yes, they're really neat things, but some of them really do have that narrative aspect, which is when you're talking about it's not a literary narrative, but it's a nonfiction, narrative.
Sure. That's great. And let's turn over to Nicole now. So let's hear about your project, Nicole, and what was videotaped.
Got to unmute. So with my students, at the time I was teaching ESL, and we used Youth Voices, which Paul Allison's creation, and it was really in response. I was doing quite a bit of writer's workshop in the classroom. I was teaching a range of language abilities, students from different parts of the world, and so it was a great class to do this with because mostly I was looking for a place where we could have an authentic audience and where student choice would be at the core of this. And it turned out Youth Voices was excellent for this opportunity because as my students started to go on to this website and try to just look at the range of topics, it just really touched on whatever my students were interested in for the most part, they could find writing on it. What I found to be fantastic about the site is it was just chock full of mentor texts. So when you have a class full of language learners and everyone's at different abilities, the ability to just give them a website or a blog site where they can find mentor texts that are right on their level, I thought was fantastic. So really it brought in three things that I can think of right now off the top of my head, which was student choice, authentic audience, and mentor text. So it was perfect for that. And they loved it. They just loved it. They would beg me, like, hey, when can we go on Youth Voices and do this? So I was really pleased with that experience. And then for Jen to come in and actually capture it with her team from Region 13 was great because then the students were like, wait a second, people love what we're doing too. And then they just enjoyed it even more. So it was great.
I had a question about this notion of mentor texts. And so were the mentor texts for your students texts written by other students, by other young people? Is that what you meant by mentor?
Yeah, I meant, so these are peer mentor texts. And I think what's pretty remarkable is the quality of writing on Youth Voices is really great. And so oftentimes my students who are kind of emerging writers would be, I think at first a little intimidated by the level of writing that a lot of their peer would be contributing. But at the same time, I think that worked in our favor because it really set the bar high for what the students could achieve and they could see what other students were writing in various places across the country. So it was really pure mentor text.
And was there a level of trepidation on the part of your young people in putting themselves out there publicly in a space where they themselves could see that they were reading the texts and writing of other young people, to know that their writing then would be looked at? Was that motivating? Was it fear-inducing? Was it both?
I think it was a healthy pressure. I think that depending on the student, there were times where students, to hit the publish button was a little intimidating, but I think it just gave them a healthy fear, and they kind of liked it. It was kind of like this challenge. But there were certainly a couple students who were like, no, I'm not gonna, I can't put this on here. But they did. What I enjoyed also is if students were a little hesitant to interact with unknown peers that are on Youth Voices, they could actually just respond to each other. Or I would have students respond to other class periods if they were feeling a little shy. They might know a couple students from the other class, like period 3 or something like that, and so then they could respond to their peer group within the school also, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, and so this also reminds me of one of the things that I really loved about watching these videos. They were just so well produced, first of all, and secondly, so many of them had such a sense of student voice in them. Not even such a sense. I mean, they had student voice. It seemed like student voice was front and center in many respects in these videos. And I'm wondering if you and Emily, Nicole and Emily, if you two could respond to that in terms of how your young people, have they gotten a chance to see the videos, and if they have, what their response to it has been, and how you feel about that notion of the students being sort of front and center in the videos in that way, and perhaps by doing that, give the audience a sense of like what the videos are like, because it's not just simply a like here is Nicole teaching, and that's what you're just going to watch, is essentially Nicole in front of the classroom or standing at a computer, but it's a very sort of nuanced look at this entire project, and includes youth reflection. I realize there's a lot there in that set of questions, but really it's focused on this idea of the way in which young people have a chance to have a voice in these videos, what they thought of that, what you think of that, and then also perhaps through that lens, if we could give the audience a sense of what these videos are like. Looks like Emily, you're ready to jump in on that one.
That was, God, the production of the video in general was so impressive. I mean, and even the production crew that came in, like, I live in Austin around a lot of really cool people doing cool things with video cameras. and I was like, okay, these guys are legit. These guys are legit. But when we got the final product, I mean, never could I imagine that they would capture my kids in such a magical way. I mean, their voices, it was them. It was them. And I didn't get it until the next school year. And so I teach 5th grade. My babies are gone. They're in 6th grade. And, they come back and say hello every once in a while. So I was just sobbing the first time that I got it, like the first edit, because, I miss my kids all the time, but like to see them and hear them and know exactly like, oh my gosh, they did a wonderful job capturing Zayteric. They did an amazing job capturing Francis, and I just couldn't wait for those kids to come and visit me so I could show it to them. One kid in particular who talked about the superheroes, or not superheroes, the comic books and the history of comic books. He comes probably once a week. He's responsible for picking up all of his siblings at school, so he'll always drop in and say hello. And one day we went in and watched it on the big screen, and he wanted to watch it again and again. We must have watched it, both of the videos, like 5 times in a row, because I don't think anyone had ever listened to him and sat down and wanted to know what he was thinking. It was this really beautiful thing. Like, I get teary-eyed just thinking about it. I mean, that was one kid who just thrived, and he wasn't even with me the whole year. I don't know if y'all know this, but that kiddo didn't come to me until a month before those Hive Talks. And he was already just, I mean, such a cool kid. So, yeah, that was my feelings about it. It's all emotional, but,
That's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, I felt the same way in hearing, or being able to, I guess, experience through the eyes of your students, what this project meant to them and the significance to them. I'm wondering, actually, Nicole. Oh, and Jen, would you like to jump in?
Oh, well, I just wanted to just kind of jump in. Having been in Emily's classroom several times, that's kind of the feel that you get when you walk into her classroom. The kids, they're in control of what's happening. She has set the stage, and I think that's true in Nicole and Valerie's classrooms as well. That there is just this sense that this is your space, this is your work, and that really comes through. I think that shines through. But Emily's students, as they were preparing for their Hive Talks, I mean, they all had their direction, and everyone knew their piece, and they were so excited about what they were doing and the fact that they got to decide, what passion they were going to share, what interest they were going to share. It was really just an amazing thing to witness that when this environment has been cultivated where students just get to work. Like they're excited about it, and they know what they're doing, and I feel like you can see that in all three of these classrooms, whether it's Emily's classroom or Nicole's or Valerie's classroom, just this sense of purpose that is established, and that's not an easy thing, I don't feel like, to establish with a group of learners. Okay, I'll shut up now.
Well, no, that's great, and Jen, perhaps you can continue. I know that when you first when you first shared the link to these videos, to this video project with me, you framed it in terms of some of the principles of connected learning, this idea of and production-centered work. And so I would like to go back to Nicole, and I want to give Valerie a chance to introduce herself, but since you started this line, I'm wondering if you talk a little bit, you and perhaps Cindy and Janet, to talk a little bit about what is the significance of this project? Why do you think it's important?
Well, I definitely see connected learning happening in all three of these classrooms. And I think that, to me, the importance just goes back to sharing with other teachers. I think that it's so easy to get disconnected and to really not have kind of insight into what's happening in other classrooms. If you are if you don't have some kind of exposure to other practices. And I know that as Central Texas Writing Project teachers, or any writing project teacher, you have this amazing connection. I feel like that was something that for me was huge in probably continuing within education. But there are so many teachers, and I think being at Region 13 was kind of an eye-opening experience in that it's important that we share innovative practices. And I think especially as we, as a society are trying to transition to something that is more student-centered and more about connected learning, as slow as that seems and as halting and as many forces trying to pull in the other direction, I feel like to know, not what people are telling us policy must be, but to know what what amazing teachers are really doing, and to see, wow, look at that. That is why this is important to me.
I think also on our end, it was really important for us to connect the dots to the state tests and show teachers that there are other ways of getting kids prepared that involves more engagement, that involves more ownership, like you were talking about, Jen, but that those kids are so confident in their writing. These I think we call them practices, like the audio comments, the digital writing, the Hive Talks. These are practices that really give kids the skills of research, the skills of writing a cogent argument, the skills of revising and responding to feedback. All of that will, in the end, prepare them for our state tests, but so much more. And our teachers are often so preoccupied with those tests, like you said, to show them that there are other ways and that there's a connection right here. There's a teacher in your district, in your region, that's reaching kids and getting them so excited, yet at the same time preparing them for the test. That was really important for us at the Service Center.
And part of me, sorry to interrupt, but part of me like almost wanted and I know you probably can't do this, but like take a similar demographic school in an urban area in Austin and like look at my kids' test scores every year compared to those that are doing, they're doing fine and they're loving it. You know, I read, today we had a test. Today, and yesterday I read Hooray for Diff and Do for Day. And, you know, it's so true. If you teach a child to think, then they will be able to do anything. And they'll love learning, and they won't want to drop out, and they won't want to leave school. I mean, it's important to showcase that the test is not the end-all, be-all, but hey, tests are real, they're a thing. Our kids are still doing great on them, but they're also loving every day at school.
Yeah.
And I think it was really important to us to bring things to life, to show that real live teachers are doing this, you know. And it's one thing to read about a practice and have it described, and here are some resources, and you can do this, that, or the other. But to watch these three fabulous teachers bring it to life and just see how it's done exactly is a very different experience than just reading about it. And that was really important to us.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I want to give Valerie a chance to talk in just a moment, but I wanted to circle back to Nicole. I didn't know, Nicole, if you had anything that you wanted to add to this notion of student voice, or the fact that your young people had this opportunity to really be able to voice their interest in the project or reflect on their work in this video.
Yeah, Paul, I think you brought up like a really interesting point. Is the way that my students talked about it in the video in so many ways was probably how I presented it to them. You know, I don't think I said, okay, we're writing over here, but now we're going to put our writing on this. I mean, I remember very deliberately saying, you know, this is a community of writers that we're going to be a part of, and this is a place for you to voice what you think. And there's one student in particular who talks about it. You know, he kind of compares it to Facebook a little bit, but you know, he does talk about how it's a place where they can go to research issues and talk about things that are important to them. And to be honest, I think that was the driving factor in what really got them to love it, was that it was this space for them, and it was a bigger space, that was a bigger community. And that was really great. That was that student choice, that student voice was really paramount to that success. Yeah.
It's great then that that's reflected in the video itself. You know, so in the work and then in the reflection of the work. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's so important as teachers to make that transparent. Like, you know, what can this tool be used for? Not just writing, but what kind of writing are we talking about here? We've got multiple genres that we can explore through youth voices, but you know, what does it mean to you, and what does it mean to your identity and who you are? You know, is really important.
Yeah, and I think it's really critical that you brought up this notion of community too, because I know from talking to Paul Allison that is how he at least thinks the sort of the greatest ambition of youth voices is. I mean, of course, you can put up all kinds of writing, but this notion of a place where young people can feel like they're part of a community of writers or a community of young people, that is really the greatest ambition of youth voices. So it's terrific to be able to realize that, I think.
That's great.
Yeah, so I wanted to give Valerie a chance, since you've been waiting really patiently since you came on. Hi, Valerie. I was wondering if you could introduce yourself and then talk about your project, the strategy or the approach that is shared in your video.
Okay. I'm Valerie Taylor, and I teach at Westlake High School in Austin. I wanted to comment first before I talk about my project about this idea that all of this work helps kids be better prepared for the test, for the state test, because I have conversations like this so many times where people will say to me, well, you teach in a school where you can afford to do that, you know, we have to do test prep at our school, and I'm saying no, you do need to prepare kids for the test, yes, of course, and you need to make them familiar with the format of the test, but if you have them working beyond the test, doing writing in ways that are more creative and that they really have a strong voice, then those things are going to prepare them for the test better than anything else you could do. And so I want to just echo that sentiment that I was hearing earlier, that this is so important that we encourage teachers to not work down but work up. So I just wanted to comment on that first. The project that we are involved in at Westlake High School is a Vietnam Memorial Project. And so one of the things that we do with the junior AP students is, and I'm not sure why we don't do it with all the junior students, but junior AP students, is that they each receive a name off of the virtual wall from the Vietnam War, and then research that serviceman who died in the war, and create a multimedia project that is online. We have our own virtual wall on our website. And that project, then, we had to figure out some way to grade. So most of the videos concentrated on how we respond or give feedback to the students on those projects. And we began using a few years ago an app called Audio Note, and that app allows us to, I'm allowed to really watch the project and give feedback to the students while I'm watching the project, and they can hear the the music and the sound in the background and know like where I'm talking about, or I might say, on this slide this is what's happening. And so the biggest portion of the video, I think, is focused on the idea of how do we give feedback to students in a digital way, in addition to having them create digital projects. So I guess that gives a big overview.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think, given that you talked, Valerie, about this app that you're using, and it's clear that there's some sort of technology component or digital component to all of these projects, I'm wondering if the teachers here, and we can start with you, Valerie, if you don't mind, can talk a little bit about the significance of technology, the significance of digital literacy tools in this work, and why you're pursuing that, with your young people. What's the point in your mind of trying to get your kids to be facile and to be able to work with digital tools?
Sure. Well, we are fortunate to be in a one-to-one school with iPads, a technology bond that was passed a few years ago that allows us to have our students all have iPads, and that is helpful, of course, in terms of the technology aspect. I think that our students, I heard the other day that instead of calling it 21st century literacy, we just need to call it digital literacy. I forgot where I read that, but that we're like 14, 15 years into the 21st century, we should stop calling it 21st century literacy. Pardon?
I said I might have written that.
Yeah, you might have written that. So that idea that we need to start calling it digital literacy seems important to me, and that because the kids are, even if they don't have home computers, internet access at home, a lot of them still have smartphones, and they're able to access a lot of things that and not only access but also contribute to the world in ways that they haven't ever been able to before. I realize not all students have that access, easily at their hands, but even if they don't have their own devices, they're often sharing devices or going to places where they can use devices, and it's certainly a way that opens up a line of communication that students have never had before. We were talking today in my class about the idea of promulgating, and how I said, so ancient times, how were things promulgated? And of course, I had some student who said cave drawings, and I said, well, yeah, okay, so cave drawings, but when people wanted to promulgate an idea like to the public, what were they doing? They said going out to the the open air space, the plaza, the central area of the town, and they were sharing their ideas. I said, and so that eventually turned into like the newspaper or a magazine, and that now is in the internet, right? So today we promulgate our ideas through the internet typically. So I think that that's what we want to think about, is that that's where students can share their ideas and respond to others' ideas.
Wonderful. And how about you, Nicole? What would you say about this in terms of your motivation or rationale for really focusing your young people on using digital literacy tools or the open web, for instance?
I think I would say I think it's so important to give my students a chance to contribute to something greater. I think when we talk about community, we can talk about our classroom as a community of writers, and there's ways in which we contribute to that. But then this is just this is a bigger chance to contribute to something greater, a greater community that fits within the literacies that are going on, you know. So it's critical to be doing this, and it challenges them. With my students in particular, you know, they weren't really privy to writing academically online. They're used to writing in the ways that they write, and that was a perfect springboard. Even though my students might be new to the country or maybe in the country for just a few years, everybody had some experience with it. And then from that, you know, we moved forward into academic writing on a platform that was not only familiar to them, but was exciting because they did get to contribute to something bigger, to that community. So I think that was the real joy in it.
Fantastic. And I didn't know, Emily, if you wanted to contribute anything to this line.
Sure. Of course. I actually have 2 jobs at my school, and I'm also the technology representative for our school as well. It's an unpaid position, but I love it. And so I work every summer to, like if there are older computers, you have to go through a process, and like if you end of life them, then you get new technology in, and that's something that I'm really passionate about. A lot of our kids don't have access to internet at home, or to just like devices in general, a variety of devices. That's also something I'm really passionate about, is like digital flexibility in between, like, can I use a Mac, can I use an iPad, can I use a PC, can I use, you know, a Nook or something. And so I work really hard to make sure that our school has access to those things, whether it be grants or donations, anything like that. I think also the other really big thing that I work with the teachers on my campus is that technology isn't just like going to a website and doing a game. Technology is a resource where you can design and create and explore. And that's what you see in all 3 of our videos, is they're using it to create something, using it to design or to analyze. It's not just an app or a program. And then the final thing I think is really important, working with more of an urban population, is because we don't have access to as many technological resources, they're so afraid to break it or touch it because they've been told, you know, don't touch that. That's only if you finish something early, or you're going to break it. I mean, and for our stop motion animation, like, we literally hung them from the ceilings using yarn because we had, you know, seen that on a TED Ed video of like, that's how you did stop motion. You have to have a suspended camera. And they're like, is that okay, Miss Smith? But they learned, but we problem solved, and, you know, well, we've got these beams coming through, and we've got this yarn, and it looks pretty sturdy, and it was a little questionable, but we didn't lose any. We didn't lose anything, and it was a great experience for the kids because they even engineered 4 stations, 2 upright and 2 face down, using iPads. So just understanding that technology is a resource that is always available to them. It is it is a seamless move between a book to a digital article, back to a poem, back to a TED Talk. I mean, that to me is probably the most important thing.
Great, thanks. And I'm wondering for the Region 13 team, so why the focus on technology infused or technology powered work? Was that conscious and deliberate? I'm guessing that it was, and if yes, why then?
It was, certainly, because we know that sometimes it becomes about the technology. What does this technology do, rather than using it as a tool to create something or do something? And so we wanted to have an opportunity to show how teachers are integrating it as a tool, not making it the end itself. That was very important to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with each of these teachers in Emily's and Nicole's and Valerie's classroom, their students are not only digital consumers, they are digital creators, and they are looking at digital texts in critical ways, and I think that's what we want teachers to understand that they can do. And I'm going to just kind of steal from one of our coworkers, Leslie Barrett. and actually this isn't her line, but then I can't remember where she got it, but you can't opt out of the 21st century. Although I guess I'd have to change that now to you can't opt out from the digital world. I think it's important for teachers to understand that not only is this something that would be great for you to be doing, but this is our responsibility. This is the world we live in, and it is irresponsible to not help your students navigate the digital world. This is what they live in. They need to be able to look at text and be able to decipher meaning and understand bias. They need to be able to be smart consumers and creators of digital content. And so I really feel like not only is it a nice thing to do, it's our responsibility as educators to help our kids get there and to use this medium. I mean, this is their world.
Yeah, I recently met a guy who's an educational consultant, and he told me that he starts his any presentation that he does with a question to the audience, which is, and generally it's an audience of educators, and his question is, do you think young people in the world will be using more or less technology in 10 years and in 20 years? And I mean, the answer is almost always, unanimously more. And so if that's the case, and if that's the starting point, and if that's what we believe to be true, then how do we actually prepare them for that world in 10 or 20 years? It's not by using less technology. It's not by giving them access to fewer technology tools. It's actually by helping them navigate those technology tools more. And I would just quickly add, in relation to what Nicole was saying about being part of a community, it just seems to me like if our other aim as educators is to give young people the fullest opportunity to participate in our democracy, the way that our democracy, I think, rewards participation these days, civically, or whether it's the established political system or it's the sort of informal way in which young people and adults as well participate in the system. It's it's digitally. So I don't know. Those feel like really compelling arguments in my mind. But I'll get off my soapbox, and I'll just say, as a question to everyone, basically, and I think you've begun down this path already. What should teachers keep in mind, would you say, when implementing a new technology with students or with young people? What general or specific tech understandings need to be taught?
Well, I can jump in on that, I guess. I also wanted to add, I don't know if anybody heard this NPR story this morning about the balloons that Google and Facebook are trying to put out in the world in places where they don't have electricity, and trying to give people access to the internet through these balloons that they're putting above the communities. I don't know if you heard about that, but that seems to be like pointing to the fact that we have a world that's moving in this direction, even in places where they don't have electricity. So, just a little side note. I think one of the things we have to keep in mind is that even though the kids I'm teaching who are juniors were born after the internet existed, a lot of them still do not feel completely comfortable with technological tools. Because they even in our district where we have a lot of technological tools, they often have not been asked to use them very effectively in their school situations. The teachers don't feel comfortable, so they haven't asked students to use them, and so they will come in and sometimes I think teachers say, well, just figure it out or just use it. And I think we have to keep in mind that we have to, just as with any other tool, give them some ideas, show them some ways that people have used them before, show them some possibilities with the tools. Because I don't think that even when we think they are natives, they often haven't been asked to use them in a school situation.
I think it's kind of like when we talk about language acquisition, we talk about basic interpersonal communication skills and cognitive academic language proficiency, whatever, the two differences. Like, our kids can sit there and play Angry Birds and access apps and order more apps, but they don't know how to use technology in an academic way. So I would say that would be kind of what I focus on in the classroom. It's like, these are things that real people are doing at their jobs every day. This is an academic, a professional use of technology to create and design something new. So that would be my big thing.
I want to add, just kind of on the other side, to not be afraid to just be flexible and try, and not be afraid to say I don't know. And I'm thinking about my last year in the classroom was at Westlake with Valerie, and one of the last things we did were some digital stories. And we used I gave them the option of a couple of tools that I really didn't know how to use. And so it was kind of this exploratory, which student can become the expert. And I think letting our students kind of own that and realize that, hey, we don't know everything, we can't know everything. You could be the teacher here. You could step in and do a lesson for the rest of your students. And that was kind of an incredible experience to go through, where students did become experts in certain things, and they were able to share with others. And I think it was a big boost, and it also helped us kind of building community within our classroom, that we're all relying on one another, and we're all kind of running up against some of the same issues, and these things are going to happen, but we've got to move forward. We just have to help each other to understand and teach the technology.
I don't know that I would have meant necessarily that we wouldn't eliminate certain possibilities because we didn't know how to use them, but not just throw them out there and say, hope it goes well.
And I also think, when Jennifer talked about kids becoming experts, that's the first thing. Like when we're doing our podcasting, which we've now turned our Hive Talks into a podcast series as well, because we recorded all the audio. I don't edit any of that. The kids know how to edit, but I train 4 or 5 kids in each block, and then they're the experts, and they have to train everybody else. And I've also had kids come up to me, when we were doing the stop motion app, and we were a few days into it, and 2 kids were like, look, Miss Smith, this app is just not cutting it. Take a look at this one. It's $5. However, look at all these features it has. And they felt comfortable enough to call me out on, yeah, I don't think you found the best resource for us. And so we did. We threw out those 3 or 4 days that we had done, and we started on this new app that did have better features, and that was going to help us in the end because the kids felt comfortable enough to go and search for it.
And Nicole, did you want to add to this?
Yeah, I was going to say just a little bit of what Jen mentioned, because I found giving lots of unstructured time for students to just kind of play around a little bit was, I think, something I didn't start with, but then I realized I needed to do. I wanted to present to them, okay, this is this new interface we're going to use, and kind of structure it in a way that would make it safe for them, to enter into this thing. But I found really I just need to back off and just give them some time to have some unstructured time and explore it together, and kind of everybody share a little bit about what they've noticed. And I thought that was really important. I think particularly in a classroom it feels like a risk to do something like that, but in this case it was really important to do that, to build some confidence. So that was good. I think also, when I talk about youth voices to other teachers, I've noticed that if they're not bloggers, I think they tend to kind of be like, I'm not really into that. So I would almost recommend, be really open-minded about the tools that you're presented with, because it might not be for you, but you don't know that. As a teacher, you don't know. So I think it's really important to try things out, and take those risks, and if it works, great. And I think that's important, to kind of take those risks, be a little bit more flexible, a little bit more open-minded when trying these things out. So.
Speaking of risk, one question that I have, I think, for the whole group, and perhaps as a final question, to what extent do you feel like as well teachers need to have the disposition of being able to live with a certain level of uncertainty? So I think you could potentially be an expert on a technology tool and know everything about it, but that seems kind of unlikely. And B, the tools are changing so rapidly, and and the ways in which tools are being used, for particular purposes seems to be expanding and changing. So I wonder if any of you have anything to say about this notion of being able to live with a certain level of uncertainty, particularly I think if, as is evidence in your videos, you very much give young people the opportunity to be leaders of their own learning. Seems like there's a lot of potential uncertainty there. Maybe I just stumped everyone. It'd be,
Well, I guess I'll jump in again first. I was trying to not be the first one again, but I think there is definitely an element of uncertainty, but that seems to me to be part of any student-centered classroom. You don't know necessarily what kids are going to know. You don't know how they're going to react to whatever the lesson might be or the focus might be, and being able to go into that classroom and say, okay, let's try this out. Let's see what we're going to do with this. Let's see what you do with this, and then building off of that to plan whatever's going to happen the next day. And I think when if we go into class and say, well, I've got this schedule and we have to stick to this schedule, whatever we got to finish this today so we can move on to what's tomorrow, that kind of certainty totally stifles this kind of work. So when Emily mentioned the idea of risk a minute ago, or Nicole, I forgot which one of you said that, but the idea of risk a minute ago, that seems to me so key. Teachers have to take risks, students have to take risk, and if you're in a community where you feel that you're trusted and that you also can trust other people, then you're willing to take those risks.
I would say I share with my kids all the time about times that I failed in the classroom. Like the stop motion animation, that failed the first year that I did it gloriously. I mean, it was not just like a little fail, it was a giant crash. But that did not deter me from trying again, which is the year that they ended up filming. I changed a lot of things. I learned from it. And I like to share stories like that with the kids. I used to be at the beginning of my career very product oriented, even though I really valued the process. I was like, we have to get to the end product or I'm not going to have anything to put up in the hallway. But now it's more about the process, I guess, for me. And so working with the kids on, it's about the thinking that you're doing, not necessarily about what you're putting out. It does feel great when we put on a great conference or when we, publish our stop motion animation, but it also feels great all the other days, and your brain appreciated that as well. So I think just kind of sharing my failed experiences and how I used to think with my kids helps them steer their learning as we're doing it together.
That's great. And so we are just about at the end of time. So what I'd love to do is to be able to give each of you an opportunity to make one final comment or statement. We are really close to the end, so I would say if it could be brief. It doesn't have to be Twitter-like 140 characters, but perhaps just a couple of sentences. Just a final thought about this work, about the project that you're engaging with your young people, about the video platform itself. One final sentence or two. Let's go right to left this time, on my screen at least. We'll start with you, Valerie.
I was hoping you wouldn't start with me, okay? I would say it's important that when we don't always know the answers that we still take the risk to try this work.
Great, thank you. How about you, Nicole?
I would just say, I'm grateful for the sense of purpose and the connection that my students have through these opportunities with the digital tools that I was able to use, and I'm certainly inspired by the two other teachers also. Fantastic.
Great, thank you. Jen?
Okay, sorry, I'm now distracted. I have the 3-year-old again here. I'm just so excited that this is getting shared and that all of these videos are out there, and I mean, it's just lovely to get to connect with everyone, and to know that their incredible work is out there for other for other teachers to find inspiration from.
Great. Thanks, Jen.
Sure.
And how about Janet and Cindy?
I'll go first. Well, on my end of things, I rarely get to see students anymore. I mostly work with teachers, so being able to see your students and them thinking and their writing and their reading and their energy just leaping off the video was just an amazing experience for me personally, and I just love that we have these inspirational videos in our back pockets for when we're talking with teachers and they're like in the muck, like how do I get these kids engaged? How do I get the heads off the desk? Like we have something very real and immediate to point to, and I just thank you guys so much for letting us into your classrooms.
And I think I want to just second that and say it's very inspiring to watch the work that the students are doing, the work that teachers are doing, and that journeying side by side. And uncovering meaning together, and circling back around to what Jen said about the responsibility piece of it. We have a responsibility to learn ourselves and to give kids tools and ways to evaluate tools so that they can learn.
Great. And so, Emily, bring us home.
So much pressure. I think I would first like to say that it was amazing to be a part of this project. Like I said, the production and what they did to capture my kids' voices was really amazing. And I think that being a teacher is really amazing because you get a whole year to help shape and guide a kid, and when it's done right, it's the most magical thing in the world.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank each and every one of you for being part of this webinar, and I want to thank the three teachers for sharing their practice. That takes a lot of courage, and thank you for putting your work out there so that we all can benefit, not only enjoy, but really benefit from the great teaching that you do and the amazing learning that happens in your classrooms. Thanks to our audience for participating today and for joining. If you're interested in learning more about connected learning, make sure to check out the Connected Learning Alliance at clalliance.org, and also check out some of the resources that we have at Educator Innovator to keep abreast of future opportunities from Educator Innovator. Sign up for our monthly newsletter at educatorinnovator.org, and follow us on Twitter at innovates_ed. Good night, everyone. Thanks a lot.